Attach,
Cold
steel, prepare to move forward. And I had some crazy lieutenants in the battery at that time. So some guys you probably know, maybe Al Labella, Lieutenant Labella. It was like a former Navy enlisted guy. You know, he was like a 52-year-old first lieutenant. You know, he wasn't that old, but Al Labella was a great guy. Tony Kyansky, Lieutenant Kyansky, who he was a West Pointer. He was, I think, a year behind me. Frankie J. Cook, Lieutenant Cook, who was the XO in Cold Steel when I was a lieutenant. Frankie J. Cook was a great guy. We had a really good nucleus when I was in Cold Steel with Russ Bodine, Frankie J. Cook, First Sergeant Top Lopez, Chief Sam, Kyansky, Labella, and me. I mean, that was a crazy crew. I mean, we rented some limos. We did some things that we should not talk about as a group. We got into some troubles in a lot of places. Whether it be, the Dollhouse in Fayetteville or Gabby's on Dyer. And
Marshall in the middle.
Hey, what's going on, partner?
Hey, Dr. Edward Jackman, everybody. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I lost your voice there for a second.
I'm plugging you into my sound system here.
Now you're back. It seems like our connection. Oh, it's telling me my connection is unstable. That's what we're dealing with. Let's see if my connection will clear up. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Oh, sir, I'm doing great. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. Wow, I'm not sure we ever have met in person, if I remember, but I know that you were part of the old Cold Steel battery back when I was actually a part of the battery. I think I was at Jumpmaster school back in those days.
So, yeah, we were in battalion at the same time. We're never in the same battery.
Right.
But you were one of those Delta dogs.
No, I never was in Delta.
I thought you were in Delta, no?
No. Now, look, there were some great folks, right? Wow, that came out of Delta Battery. I either lucked out or didn't luck out and never made it there. I was a Bravo Battery and Charlie Battery were the only two batteries I was in third.
I don't know why I thought you were one of Evan Phelps's guys when they stood up Delta.
Yeah, no, I had I was only there really in the 90s. And it never went back. I got there in '87 and kind of left in 2000. And it was a great time for me and loved it, every minute of it, and wouldn't change it, for the world. Hey, I'm talking to a doctor. I got to sit up straight, right? Isn't that cool? Congratulations, sir. Success and titles and things. Look, to those that don't maybe have them, they're a big deal. So thanks for taking your time. You get paid by the hour, and you're taking up your valuable time to talk to me. Thanks. I'm honored.
Hey, the best part of my job as a doctor, I'm an ER doctor, and it's been a long, strange trip going from being a dumb second lieutenant in the 82nd Airborne Division, looking for chem light batteries. To being an emergency medicine physician. But the best part of my job is taking care of veterans. So when I get old veterans come in, it doesn't matter to me, Army, Navy, whatever. But it's nice to take care of some old soldiers and just kind of talk about when they've served and what they did, and these Vietnam guys and some Korea guys are really old now. But talking to veterans and talking to paratroopers, especially whenever you run into a paratrooper, man, it's the best part of my day.
Isn't it neat? There's a bond that is easily understood among people that jump out of airplanes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And not just, not your 5-jump chump, but guys who did it for a living. Yeah, absolutely. It changed my life. I was in the 82nd, I was in 3-4 from 94 to 97. So I was there during Colonel Younger's time with Command Sergeant Major Adams, and then and then Colonel Bob Woods. And I was there with Major Williams. I don't know if you remember Major Larry Burnett, who was the XO. And him and I served together in ROTC land later on down the line in North Carolina. And I still stay in touch with all those guys. First Sergeant Lear and Bruce Lucier. I don't know if you remember Bruce Lucier, Top Lucier. It was an amazing 3 or 4 years, of my life. Changed my life, my trajectory, changed my whole military career. Everything I did after that was marked by what sergeants taught me in the 82nd. So.
Yeah, so it's an interesting breeding ground. I say that in the 82nd, especially 3rd of the 4th, we bred our own NCO Corps, and we were handed the best officers you could possibly get. We were fed the cream of the crop, being 3rd of the 4th in the Airborne Battalion, and it was easy then to accomplish our mission when you had guys that were true pros as NCOs and officers that were smart and also willing to listen most of the time, right?
Some of the time.
Oh,
yeah.
No, most of the time.
Yeah.
Really?
The lieutenants, I mean, we had to have it beat into us,
Well, that was some of First Sergeant Stout's training plans, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so I was in Bravo Battery for a year, and then I went to HHB, and so I was in Bravo Battery for a year when I don't know if you remember Captain Collins, Willie Collins.
Oh yeah, I know.
Battery
well.
Commander Willie P.
Yeah.
And I forget who the first sergeant was then. In Bravo then. I could see his face. Not Jones. But anyways, and then I went to HHB, and I was the TDAR platoon leader.
Oh wow, that's geekiness at its finest right there.
Right? Yeah. Like anybody even knows what TDAR is anymore. And I don't even think I was only there for like 6 months, and I don't even think we had a TDAR that worked. Maybe for a month that I was there. So we were doing all this ADA scout training stuff, with binos and just doing the flashcards that everybody else did anyways. And then I went to Cold Steel, and had probably the best year of my life. Was the year that I was a platoon leader in Cold Steel. Getting attached to 1st of the 505th, and I worked for Colonel Fondacaro, who was the battalion commander there. Russ Bodine, who you've already done a session with. I tell you what, man, I'm still in touch with that guy. I mean, he had an immeasurable impact on me, and we just had a great time in Cold Steel. So, and then I went over to Alpha Battery to be the XO in my last year from 96 to 97. Captain Peters was the battery commander. And I forget the name of the first sergeant. He was a big, tall guy, flat top, old school guy. I think he was in an accident out at Fort Bliss at AQF in like a van accident or something, rolled a van and got paralyzed. I think that was after I left, but I forget his name.
I'm drawing a blank right now too, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I went from Bravo to HHB to Charlie Battery to Alpha. So other than Delta, I mean, I got to experience the whole battalion in 3 short years. And that was such a blessing, just to be able to bounce around and work with so many different high quality NCOs. It was just amazing. But it was kind of a problem, because I left the 82nd. I left 3-4 ADA, and I went to the 3rd ID to command. So I went and commanded a Bradley linebacker battery. They had the M6 Bradley linebacker. They put the Avenger pod on the side of a Bradley. And so I was in 1-3 ADA at Fort Stewart. And, you're a new captain and you're going to battalion staff, and then you're going to take battery command. But coming from the 82nd, man, because of the NCOs and the soldiers of the 82nd, primarily the NCOs, obviously, my standards were so high. My expectations were so high. And, you get to a mechanized division and they're like, hey, why walk when you can ride, sir? Like that kind of whole thing. And I was like, wait a minute, where are the guys that want to jump out of airplanes in the middle of the night at 800 feet AGL, or at 400 feet AGL with no reserve? Where are the guys that jumped into Panama? I didn't have those NCOs. And it's not that they weren't good NCOs, but I just quickly learned that there's the 82nd Airborne Division, and then there's the Army. And there's a different standard among the NCO Corps. The pride, the esprit de corps, the work ethic, the grit, the true care for your soldiers. It's just a whole different world, I think, when you're an NCO and you're raised in a world where you're jumping out of airplanes and you're laying on a wet drop zone all night under a poncho. And that's how you're teaching your soldiers, to grow up. So it was kind of a problem. I had some issues with some of my NCOs when I moved on to the 3rd ID, because they just did not play. They did not play like the 82nd guys. They did not play like 3-4 ADA. It was just a different standard. They just didn't care for their soldiers the same way. And I'm not saying they weren't technically proficient. I mean, they had to do table 8 and, shoot those Bradleys and qualify, on their 50 cal and everything. And I'm not saying they weren't technically proficient, but they just were not the same strack, hardcore, all day, all night, fit to fight, rain, sleet, snow, we're ready to go, 18 hours, wheels up. Like, I just didn't find that, anywhere else.
Didn't you notice such a camaraderie among competitors? Because we were, and in the 82nd, we were all in competition with one another in some way, and we knew it, right? If it was just a competition with the enemy, we knew that we might be in competition within 18 hours at some point, and we all had to be winners. But I'll tell you what, that iron sharpened iron at the 82nd, and you knew it, didn't you? Did you feel the same way?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Even if you're just doing PT running up in Ardennes, and I'm not talking about a division run, you just be running with your battery or your platoon, and you're running by some infantry guys or some engineers, and you're giving them shit, you're down Ardennes one way, they're coming up Ardennes, and and you got NCOs screaming and yelling at them, and running circles around their formation, and and then we do the division runs, All America Weekend, everything, you got your people with their guidons running circles around other units and running back with their guidon, and they get, guys are taking off and your guidon's gone for like 30 minutes because they're running the whole division. They're lapping the whole division with their guidon. You never see that anywhere else. It's amazing.
There's just something about like when I think about the Roman legions and just the historical battle units that were out there that were ready to go whatever their nation needed, and then look back on us in our day on Longstreet for that division run, or on Pike Field for that big parade, or jumping into Honduras or Panama or Haiti or wherever we needed to go, we were there. And dude, there's a lot of pride in that, right? It's like, yeah, I was there, baby.
I tell you what, a lot of pride, a lot of respect. Yeah, I just, I am an entirely different man, not just because I served in the 82nd, but because I served with, just amazing NCOs and amazing officers too. But, the NCOs in 3-4 ADR were the backbone of that unit. Officers come and go, but, I mean, how many years were you in 3-4 total?
So probably total 10, because I took 3 different trips. But 10 years I was there, yeah.
I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find any officer anywhere that spent 10 years in 3-4. I mean, maybe guys come back and do 2 tours. Maybe a guy was a lieutenant and then he comes back as an XO or an S3, or he comes back as a commander. It's tough to find an officer that spent 10 years there, but that's commonplace among, the NCOs. So, it's just a blessing it was a blessing to be a young lieutenant coming out of West Point, where you've learned, what the Army is one way, but you've never actually had soldiers in your hands. And, what a blessing to be, the first duty station where you're really going to get your hands dirty and you're really going to figure out how to really lead soldiers, and to have the best NCOs in the Army teaching you how to do it. I mean, it's absolutely, it was amazing. It was such a blessing. And it like I said, changed my military career, and, really helped me set sights. There's just, there's just no limits. That's the culture. There's just no limits. There's no answer but yes, and can do, and get it done, accomplish the mission, and take care of your soldiers.
That's it. And the legacy before us, there's no way we could fail, right? It just wasn't an option, and so you found a way to make it happen every day. So take me back. Take me back to young Edward. Where were you born? What were your aspirations as a kid? Were you a good student? Did you tell me about athletics? Tell me about mom and dad, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a long story. Yeah, so I was born in Massachusetts. I'm kind of a New England kid, mostly. Um, my parents were divorced when I was one. I'll tell you a funny story that, paratroopers listening to this will appreciate this story. I don't tell this story to everybody, but my mom was already divorced in 1969 with 3 kids. My dad had just come back from the Army. He served in Germany in the late 60s, and had just come back, was working for a fence company. And they met at a bar. My mom worked at a bar. They met at a bar called the Happy Swallow. So that's the name of the bar. They had a big, picture of a red bird out on the sign, but that's not the reputation that the bar had. It was not about the bird. And so the whole, joke my whole life was, if my mom had just followed the instructions on the sign, I wouldn't even have been here. But so yeah, so I have a very proud lineage. It's almost like royalty. Being a product of after work love at the Happy Swallow Bar in Framingham, Massachusetts. And my parents got divorced before I could even remember. My parents were divorced before I was 2 years old. My mom was married 5 times. I mean, my mom was married 3 times. My dad was married 5 times. So I had 8 marriages between my parents. I lived with my mom growing up, mostly in Massachusetts. We bounced around from place to place. I was in Rhode Island for a little bit. I lived in Colorado for a couple of years because I had an older sister who lived out there. We went out there for a couple of years. But uh, you know, I grew up poor. I mean, we were on, my mom would be in between jobs. We'd be on welfare, off the welfare, living on government surplus grilled cheese sandwiches and all that kind of stuff. But so I kind of grew up, I think kind of scrappy, and um, with an internal desire to want to do more and be better, because my mom was always just like a shift worker, worked at this job, that job, never really had a career. My dad was a used car salesman. Um, so I got into Boy Scouts when I was like, I did Cub Scouts and then Boy Scouts, when I was like 10, 11, 12. And one of my Boy Scout leaders was an Army sergeant who was in the 82nd, served in Vietnam, was still in the Army in the reserves, had been in 10th Special Forces Group. He was a pretty hardcore guy, and I didn't really have, good role models, and he kind of took me under his wing. And First Sergeant retired Joe Gerard, and him and his wife, I moved in with them when I was like 14. And they're still, basically my surrogate parents today. They split time between New Hampshire and Florida now. My wife and daughter and I are flying to Florida in December to spend a week with them. But that paratrooper, that guy right there, that paratrooper was, he was the first paratrooper in my life, and had a huge impact on me. So through Boy Scouts, that was really kind of one of the biggest things that shaped me. I played football in high school, I wrestled, and then just clawed my way into West Point from a Voc Tech high school. I went to a Voc Tech school. Where you go to school for 1 week and then the other week you're doing a trade. And most kids, are blue collar guys. You go and work a trade. I think I had a graduating class of 256 kids. Only 4 kids went to college.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I was one of them. I went to West Point, and I'm the only to this day in the history of my high school, Joseph P. Keefe Regional Vocational Technical High School. I'm the only kid to go to any kind of service academy or anything. Coming out of there, it's just not done. So, God was really good to me, kind of blessed me with a desire to do better. And um, I had an uncle in my life on my dad's side who was a West Point graduate, taught at West Point, was a cavalry officer, was still in the Army as I was growing up, and got to know him. And he really kind of put the seed in my head that, about what West Point was and what it represented, and about leadership and the Army. And I basically thought at the time, like, the Army was like Boy Scouts, but with guns. Like, you get to go camping and run around in the woods, and you don't have to shower, and there's no women, and you get to shoot things. So it's even better than Boy Scouts. So that's kind of, a little bit. I say that a little bit in jest, but a lot of it really was kind of what got me interested in it. And I remember in high school, I had a poster. I had this big Avenger poster on my wall in high school. And, the Avenger was new. It was just coming out. All the, Army recruiters would come to our high school. And a lot of times they'd have little booths and tables. They'd be handing stuff out. And I got this, man, and it was this photo of like 3 or 4 Avengers, maybe out at Fort Bliss in the desert, with all the big, all the cactus and the, brush and all that. And I just thought the Avenger was like the coolest looking thing ever. And I think that so it was even in high school kind of where I started thinking about like air defense artillery, so it's kind of weird how it all kind of fell together. But yeah, I went from high school to actually I went to West Point Prep School for a year at Fort Monmouth in New Jersey, and then from there got into West Point, and then from there went right to the 3-4-80A after the officer basic course or whatnot.
So tell me about West Point. Was that hard? Was it easy? Was it something you loved?
It was really hard for me. I mean, I was like the number 2 kid in my class out of 256 kids, so I thought I was pretty smart. But I went to a voc tech school, and then I get to West Point, and like I'll give you an example. Like everybody there is the number 1 kid in their class. Everybody there is an Eagle Scout. Everybody there has been the captain of 2 or 3 sports. All of a sudden, I went from being like a pretty high achieving guy to I was kind of like the bottom of the barrel getting into that place. And again, I had to go to prep school first to get in. But like I had a 1280 SAT score, which I thought that was pretty good. And my 2 roommates in Beast Barracks, which is like basic cadet basic training, the first 6 weeks you're there, my 2 roommates both had perfect, whatever it was, 1600 SAT scores. Like they didn't miss a point. They were like geniuses. And that was like the average kid that went to school there. So it was tough. I struggled academically. I failed 2 classes. If you fail a class at West Point, the curriculum is so strict and it's so packed. It's not like regular college where you can just take these electives and take this. And, you're there for 4 years and you've got to accomplish your major. You've got to get a minor in an engineering discipline. Everybody there has to get a minor in an engineering discipline. It was originally an engineering school providing engineers to the Army and building America. So you still have to minor in some kind of engineering. But if you fail a class, and so if you fail one class, you go before an academic board where all these officers meet and they decide whether to kick you out or not just for failing one class. And if they keep you, then you have to go to summer school. And you only get 3 weeks off on average in the summer because you've got to go to airborne school or air assault school. You have to spend 6 weeks training other cadets, like the younger cadets, like you're kind of the drill sergeants. And then you've got to go off to a unit. Like you probably remember having cadets show up in the summer for their CTLT. So you got to go do that. So every summer, like you have so much military training to do, you only get like 3 or 4 weeks off to go home and see your family and kind of, decompress. If you fail a class, you never leave. You move from the barracks that you lived in for the spring semester into a barracks for summer school. They called it STAP, Summer Term Academic Program. And if you went to STAP, you were a STAP Ranger. They had little T-shirts, that just said STAP with the little Ranger tab. And So like after my first year, I failed a calculus class my first year, my plebe year. And so I moved into those barracks the day my semester ended. You go to school, and instead of taking one class over 16 weeks, for an hour a day, you got to take basically 6 to 8 hours of that class every day for 3 weeks, and take all the exams and all that stuff. So you finish your exam, and if you pass, you jump on a deuce and a half, and they truck you right out to your training, out in Camp Buckner. And that was tough for me, because like your summer break is literally a 20-minute deuce and a half ride. And all your classmates are coming back from being on the beach and in California and smoking and joking with their buddies for a month, and you have had no break whatsoever. And then you get done with your summer training and it's right back to school again. And unfortunately, I did that twice.
Oh no!
I did that my first summer and my second summer, after plebe year and after yearling year. So I struggled. I barely made it through that place. But military people, we have all these sayings. And one of the sayings there was, what they call the guy who graduates first in his class from West Point? Lieutenant. You know what they call the guy who graduated last in his class from West Point? Lieutenant. And it's true. You all finish as second lieutenants. And one thing I realized as soon as I got to the 82nd was your soldiers don't care about any of that stuff. And your NCOs don't care about that. They don't care if you were first in your class. They don't care if you were last in your class. All they care about is, how willing are you to learn? How committed are you to leading your soldiers? And are you going to care about your men, and treat them like men and not treat them like some sort of subservient lower class? Because there are some guys that come out of West Point with a skewed kind of understanding of what the Army really is, because all you've learned is really officer life. In a company at West Point, you have a company of cadets that's about 120 cadets that are 30 seniors, 30 juniors, 30 sophomores, 30 plebes. And you have a tactical officer that's a captain or a major, and you have one NCO. So the only real experience you have, and all your professors are officers. So the only experience you have during your whole 4 years with sergeants while you're there at West Point every day is this one NCO who has to split his time between 120 cadets and all the administrative responsibilities they give this TAC NCO. So, you really show up there really not knowing much. But the 4 years has been so intense. There's a lot of guys that show up thinking they know a lot, thinking they have it all figured out. And I could have been one of those guys. And it takes a good NCO, to kind of smack you on the back of the head and be like, hey, sir, I'm going to take care of you. But you got to take care of me, and you got to learn that you got to take care of our troops. And that's what this is all about. So it was tough. I barely made it out of there alive, man. I graduated with, we started with like 1,300 cadets in my class. We graduated with 1,018. And I'll just say that I had 4 numbers in my class rank. So I was between 1,000 and 1,018. I was right there. The only bad thing is, I can never do anything, totally right. The guy who graduates last in his class from West Point, the very last guy, is called the GOAT. And all of us have to give $1. You have to give a silver dollar to, they put it in a bag. And the guy who graduates last, who barely makes it through, on graduation day, when he goes up on the stage and he salutes and gets his diploma from the president or the vice president, whoever, he also gets this bag of, 1,000 and some odd dollars from all of his classmates. So unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to finish exactly last, but I was pretty close.
If you'd have got another C or two, you might have got there.
I was pretty close, man. I didn't want to be that close. That's for sure. So it was tough. I don't know if I'd ever do it again. It's paid dividends for me in the Army, and it's paid dividends for me after the Army, for sure. But it was a rough 4 years. It was the roughest 4 years of my life for sure.
So tell me about, jumping out of airplanes and stuff. Was that something that you aspired to do, or was that something you fell into, or what?
Yeah, it's something you fall out of, right?
Right.
Jumpmaster, there's nothing I can tell you about jumping out of airplanes, man.
Well, I want to ask you about it.
Black Hat of the Year
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That was so
Yeah.
much fun. That was great times, man. That was great times, right?
Hey, I tell you what, being a jump master is one of the greatest honors of my life. Um, and going to Jumpmaster school was one of the most professional experiences of my life in uniform. I mean, it was high stress, but you guys ran that school very professionally. Um, you didn't treat a lieutenant any different than you treated, an E5, um, in terms of worse or better. Um, I tell you what, man, I was, and I can't remember. My memory isn't that great. I can't remember if so. You can probably tell me better. I don't think I was a first time go at the end, but like I think I had one deficiency, and they gave us like an hour break or something, and then you got one chance to come back and retest or something.
Okay.
And I passed on that second go round, but I know I passed that day. Like I didn't have to come back another day or anything like that. So I forget like if you had so many deficiencies you couldn't even do that, you'd have to come back. Um, but I think I had one deficiency that put me over, and I think I don't know if we broke for lunch or whatever after testing day, and then you could come back and you got one more shot at it. But passing that course and becoming a jump master was, man, that meant more to me than becoming a captain, or a major. I mean, it's in a very elite crowd of paratroopers, never mind men. So I mean, jumping out of airplanes is awesome and great. It was a lot of fun. It's crazy, throwing yourself out into the middle of the night, trusting your equipment and trusting the jump master that's putting you out the door. And knowing that you're at least at a minimum you're training to hit the ground and go kill something. But being a jump master and having that responsibility to take care of those soldiers and put them out that door safely, or not put them out the door if it's not safe, that's an incredibly weighty responsibility because it's an incredibly risky activity. And I've never been more proud in my life than going through that school, making it through that school, thanks be to God, and then having the opportunity to be a jump master.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
and the only else I'll say about jump master is, you know, and I was, typical lieutenant. Like I'm there for 3.5 years, right? I get 67 jumps in 3.5 years. So I get my
wow, that's
master.
a lot of jumps.
Oh man, I was a
That's
jumping
smoking
fool.
it.
You're
Yeah.
a single lieutenant. You're calling all your buddies. Hey, if you got an extra spot, man, on your manifest, I want to jump. Driving down to Sicily on Saturdays and getting 3 jumps in, on a fun jump day, just chasing jumps left and right. But one of the best memories I have is actually from an NCO who wasn't even in our battalion, but I was a jump master for a mass tack jump with a 3rd Brigade at one point. And so you're doing pre-jump, and it's mostly infantry guys. There's a couple 3/4, 3/4 guys, mixed in there. But it was a big infantry jump, and I don't know how I got a jump master duty on that jump or whatever. But it was a brigade mass tack, and I did pre-jump, led them through pre-jump, and I had a sergeant first class from one of the infantry battalions, come up to me after pre-jump and pulled me aside. And he said, "Hey," he said, "Sir," he said, I was a first lieutenant at the time. He said, "Hey, sir," he said, "I want to let you know," he said, "that's the best pre-jump I've ever heard." He's like, you really know your stuff, and you're a credit to your unit, you're a credit to your battalion. Said something like, those NCOs, those guys over there have really taught you well, and hats off to you or whatever. And that compliment from that sergeant, just giving me some feedback that I was competent at doing something that I felt was so important. I'll never forget that compliment from that guy. You remember compliments like that from important people. And he was an infantry, airborne paratrooper, jumpmaster himself, a leader of men. And I don't know the guy's name, but I'll never forget that compliment. That's one of my highlights of my jumpmaster time. It's just getting that feedback and just being proud to be able to do that and take care of our soldiers, our paratroopers.
One of the things that's kind of hard to explain, right, to somebody that doesn't know is the thought of an air defense artillery lieutenant that shows up at an infantry brigade level jump and is looking at somebody and telling them, I'm going to be your jump master. And and looking out at 120 paratroopers that are gathered around you, and you pull out your little 5x7 cards with their little, just your little small little notes you got there, and you say, all right, jumpers, we're going to go on Sicily tonight, get double arm interval, jumpers hit it, and you, next thing you know, you're dancing together, right? Aren't you leading them in a dance that we all agree to? And there's something about that for us as air defenders, as the weaklings of the division, as some people seem to think, we would go down there and we had the best jump masters that the division had to offer because we cared about it in that Stinger missile jump pack, right? That Stinger missile jump pack allowed us to jump way more than anybody else. We would get entire aircraft just to ourselves to practice our craft, and we had so many good jump masters, right? So many. Who were some of your favorite personalities? Remind me of some of those personalities. You remember any?
Well, I mean, you talk about in battalion.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, top Lear, First Sergeant Lear, Sean Lear is, he was my first sergeant in Cold Steel, with Russ Bodine. And I mean, that's just a guy who's, larger than life. And, good, bad, or otherwise, you knew where you stood with him, and he was an outstanding NCO. So, he was amazing. Obviously, Command Sergeant Major Wilbur Adams is, to this day, he's my Command Sergeant Major. He's an amazing guy. And, I sent him a bottle of bourbon for Christmas last year. I sent a handful of bottles of, I don't know if you've got the 82nd Airborne bourbon yet that's circulating around. You got a bottle of it there?
It's back there.
There you go. Yeah. So I sent out, awesome. I sent out a handful of those to some of my favorite paratroopers last Christmas. Just saying thank you, for, memories years before. But, Sergeant Major Adams was one of those guys. Colonel Woods, who, became Major General Woods, he was a big, leader in my life. And I still stay in touch with him and his wife, Nadine. My platoon sergeant in Charlie Battery, in Cold Steel, who I have lost touch with this guy. So I tell you what, if you got your network and you know how to get a hold of this guy, Sergeant First Class Demichi Smith. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I remember him. I don't know. I don't have contact with him.
So I tell you what, man, he was just, he was cream of the crop, man. He was an outstanding NCO. He was so easy to work with. And I had already been a platoon leader for a year and a half when I, worked with him. So he was an experienced platoon sergeant. I was an experienced platoon leader. He knew this was my last gig and I was going to go be an XO. So, there wasn't really a learning curve for either of us. And we had a fantastic platoon. So, we had guys like Gerald Schemmel, Sergeant Schemmel, a bunch of guys. And I'm still friends with a good handful of those guys from my platoon. We used to have pool parties at my apartment complex and get wrecked, after a big, exercise or JRTC or something, and I got some great pictures, from that platoon. And they're just, it's great to be able to, be a lieutenant and be in charge of a platoon of guys with a platoon sergeant, but be able to hang out, in the right place at the right time, with your PFCs and your specialists and have a good time. And everybody understand that we're all just men, doing a dangerous job that we love to do. And so Sergeant First Class Demichi Smith, and I don't know if he went on to become a first sergeant or sergeant major, but he was an amazing guy. I'm trying to think of our warrant officer in Charlie Battery, Chief Sam. You remember Chief Sam?
Yeah, so he was ahead of me as the Jump Master of the Year. He won it a couple years before I did.
Okay. So he was an amazing guy. He was fantastic to work with, and I think his first sergeant Lopez was our first sergeant. You know, fantastic freaking NCO, great paratrooper. He's a great dude. And I had some crazy lieutenants in the battery at that time. So some guys you probably know, maybe Al Labella, Lieutenant Labella. It was like a former Navy enlisted guy. You know, he was like a 52-year-old first lieutenant. You know, he wasn't that old, but Al Labella was a great guy. Tony Kyansky, Lieutenant Kyansky, who he was a West Pointer. He was, I think, a year behind me. Frankie J. Cook, Lieutenant Cook, who was the XO in Cold Steel when I was a lieutenant. Frankie J. Cook was a great guy. We had a really good nucleus when I was in Cold Steel with Russ Bodine, Frankie J. Cook, First Sergeant Top Lopez, Chief Sam, Kyansky, Labella, and me. I mean, that was a crazy crew. I mean, we rented some limos. We did some things that we should not talk about as a group. We got into some troubles in a lot of places. Whether it be, the Dollhouse in Fayetteville or Gabby's on Dyer in Fort Bliss. It's just such a great experience, man. I just had some great guys to work with and jump with and serve with. Every day in that battalion was a great thing. And I don't know. I can't even put it to words. You get me going there, but going to AQF, the AQF experience every year, it was freaking awesome. Going to Cattleman's, and doing jump commands on the tables and.
Oh, so were you there? Were you there at Cattleman's that night?
Singing Blood on the Risers and getting thrown out of that place. I mean.
The guy, who was it that rode off on the horse or tried to get the guy's horse?
I forget who that was.
It was an officer. It was a lieutenant or a captain. I remember that. It was crazy. I'm gonna talk to Major Barrow soon, or Colonel Barrow now. I guess he's on the schedule. I can't wait.
Okay.
He was the ringleader of that night, and oh yeah, that was a blast. That was a blast. But
every year at Cattleman's was a good time.
Yeah, nothing really was broken. It wasn't really bad. Like a couple tables fell over, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I heard they let the battalion come back, right?
Yeah. We didn't go back the next year. The next year we marched. Right? We marched to the edge of Texas or something. And
man, I remember jumping out of a C5 into Fort Bliss. And I've never had an opening shock like that in my life, man. Jumping out of the back of that C5, that was crazy. And then, landing on Cactus and, we had a lot of jump injuries. That was not much of a drop zone.
Desperation drop zone.
Yeah. And then, when you're jumping into AQF, like the wind doesn't go higher than 15 knots, like it doesn't matter what it was blowing. It was 14. It was 14 and holding.
He's holding the anemometer under his shirt, under his BDU, got his beret over it, everything.
It was 17. It was 17 gusting to 25, but he said it was 14. We were good. You were coming out of that plane. Nobody wanted to land. Nobody wanted to land at that. Nobody wanted to land at that air base and ride on a bus out to White Sands or Donna Ana or wherever it was there.
It's wild when you fly that far. Well, look, if you fly anytime with a parachute on your back, you want to jump. You just want to jump, okay? Because that's the quickest way to pee. And that's it. All you want to do is the quickest way to pee.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of good times, a lot of great NCOs, man. I'm just so thankful. I can say it 100 times, but I'm just so thankful for the relationships I made in that unit and the the NCOs that taught me how to be a leader. Because I'm still, I'm an ER doc, so I have nurses and I have ER techs and I have respiratory therapists and I have, radiology technicians and, social workers and, it's small unit leadership. You got people in cardiac arrest and everybody's got to do their job and do it quickly and lives are on the line. It's the tip of the spear of medicine, just like the 82nds, the tip of the spear of the Army. And, being able to, lead people in high stress situations, even though it's a very different environment. Um, you know, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for, all the outstanding NCOs that took me under their wing and, gave me a shot and gave me a piece of their, of their time and their effort and cared about me and taught me how to care about them, just a fantastic place, man.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. Well, thanks for, sharing a few moments of your time with me. Tell me more about your, rest of your Army career. Tell me more about, becoming a ER doctor and all that stuff, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no. So I left the 82nd. I went to 3rd ID. I commanded there. And then after I left 3rd ID, I went and did an ROTC gig as a senior captain. So I taught at Wake Forest University. And then uh, September 11th happened while I was teaching ROTC. And so I volunteered to be an individual augmentee to go to Afghanistan. So I went to Afghanistan in December of '01. So we weren't really too far into it at that point. There were still chickens running up and down Bagram Air Base. We were still getting mortared, not every night, but pretty regularly. The food still sucked. But I went there as a tactical planner in the CJ-35 at 18th Airborne Corps was running it at that time. Lieutenant General Dan McNeil, 82nd Airborne Division Commander, 18th Airborne Corps Commander. So I was a tactical planner, and I was there for 6 months. And then General McNeil was moving on, and General Vines was leaving the 82nd, and he came to take charge of CJTF 180 in Afghanistan. So they asked me to be his aide because he didn't have an aide. The guy that was going to be his aide was an S3 in the 82nd, and he needed another 6 or 9 months. And I had another 6 months or so in country. So I got to be General Vines' aide in Afghanistan the last 6 months I was there, which was pretty awesome because I went from being trapped in a TOC every day, 16 hours a day to, flying to Mazar Sharif and flying to Kandahar and flying to Qatar and going to Pakistan and meeting with, Musharraf and, all these guys and really getting to see war from a different level. And General Vines, if you know General Vines, I mean, he's a soldier's general. There's not a lot of soldiers generals, but he was one of them. And, it was awesome, sitting outside of his office at my desk and, hearing him on the phone with General Abizaid, because he was General Vines was Warlord 6 in Afghanistan, and he had a lot of political parts of his job. He had to meet with Karzai. We had to go fly down to Kabul and meet with Karzai all the time. We had to meet with all the ISAF guys and listen to General Vines on the phone with 4-star General Abizaid, telling him that he hated the job and all he wants to do is just lead soldiers and that they picked the wrong guy for the job. And I'm like, how does a 3-star general yell at a 4-star general on the phone and tell him that, he's the wrong guy and he hates, he just wants to go kill people, So General Vines was a great guy to work for. He was a hot ticket. So I did that job. I was in Afghanistan from '02 to '03, basically December of '01. Went back to ROTC land, and I was getting my MBA. One of the things you do at ROTC is you can, go to school at night. May get a degree if you don't want to just screw around for the 3 or 4 years that you're teaching ROTC. So I went and got my MBA because I was thinking about getting out of the Army, and because I didn't want to go HIMAT. I didn't want to lead a Patriot unit. I didn't want to go to the Pentagon. I just wasn't sold. I loved small unit leadership and I loved the 82nd, but all these field grade officers and higher officers, it just didn't seem like it was going to be a satisfying thing for me. Unlike a lot of NCOs, they won't let you just hang out in the 82nd, So I just thought I needed to do something else. So I went and got my MBA while I was at Wake Forest, but that didn't interest me, like selling more candy bars this quarter than last quarter, or, I had guys who were lieutenants who got recruited to go out into the civilian world, buddies of mine, and they were like selling, they were doing advertising plans for Revlon, selling hair dryers and stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, we were jumping out of airplanes together. You're selling hair dryers now? so that didn't really enthuse me. And I met some docs when I was in Afghanistan that were reserve docs, and they were like, "Hey, why don't you go to medical school? Why don't you give emergency medicine a try? That would probably right up your alley." And I went back to ROTC land after Afghanistan, and I started volunteering in an ER near Wake Forest. It's Wake Forest's their level 1 trauma center. I just started as a volunteer, like one Sunday every 2 weeks, just trying to see, if that's something I would wanted to do. And I fell in love with it because it was very much like being, in a small unit. It's very much like small unit leadership. There are a lot of other kinds of doctors that I didn't think that would interest me, but this emergency medicine thing, being in the ER, having people come in with stab wounds and gunshot wounds, and they're septic and they're dying, and you got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to do it quick, and you've got to motivate people to all work together as a team to save somebody's life. Like, I was like, okay, I could see myself if I got out of the Army doing that. So I finished my MBA. I started taking classes, prerequisites to apply to med school, and then I went to Iraq. I volunteered for another individual augmentee gig. I had been accepted to Command and General Staff College, but I took this gig to go to Iraq. And so I was a detachment commander for a Joint IED Defeat Task Force team. Now it's called JIEDDO, Joint IED Defeat Organization. So they had just stood that up like a year or so before I got there. So I led a team of mostly contractors. They were ex-Delta, ex-SF guys, working for a contracting company that the Army was using to fill these JIEDDO teams, because it was all, counterterrorism and counterinsurgency, and we had a couple Marine EOD guy that was on our team, and so we would fly into my area was we were based out of Camp al-Ramadi in Iraq, and we had Fallujah, Ramadi, all the way west, all of Al Anbar province, all the way to Syria and Jordan. And so we would helicopter in and fly into a Marine battalion or an Army infantry battalion, and we would like embed with them for a week and fight with them. And then basically my guys would come up with plans to teach them some tactics, techniques, and procedures, to help them better fight, in an asymmetric warfare type battlefield, and stay alive. So they would give them tips on how better to target the enemy, because these are like some of these are like Marine infantry battalions where they just know regular Marine, conventional Army and military, tactics, and same things with some of the Army infantry battalions. And these are ex-Delta, and ex-Green regular SF guys. My right-hand man was a guy who was a recently retired, Delta Squadron, Sergeant Major. So we would fight with them for a few days, observe the enemy. We'd be in teams of 2 fighting with different platoons and companies. And then we'd give them some recommendations to their battalion commander. Hey, this is what we saw. This is what your enemy's doing. This is what you're doing. This is what your terrain looks like. And we give them recommendations on how to better target the enemy, how to better kill the enemy, and how to keep their soldiers alive. And then we'd be there a week, and then we'd leave. And if they wanted us to come back and do more intense training, we'd come back a month or 2 later to train on some of those deficiencies, some of those things they could improve on. And we just basically rotated around Al Anbar province for that year, fighting with different, Marine and infantry battalions, which was pretty cool because when we fought with the Marine guys, we got to wear Marine uniforms. We fought with the Army guys, we wore Army uniforms because it was a DOD unit, and you didn't want to be wearing a different uniform. You don't want to be on patrol, as the only guy in a green uniform when everybody else is wearing tan or whatever. So I did that for a year, and then I got accepted to med school while I was doing that. I'd started applying to med school, and so I got out of the Army in 2006 as a major after that tour, and went to medical school for 4 years. And then after medical school, I did my residency for 3 years. And then after residency, I did an emergency medicine fellowship for a year. And then after fellowship, I started working like a big boy doctor. And that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. That's it. That's all of it.
I mean, come on, that can't be all of it. I mean, there's a lot of details you left out, but thanks for sharing. Wow, that's so cool. One of the things that I think intrigued me the most about what you're saying is something I never really thought about before. was the leadership that you have to wield at the ER doctor level. I just never really thought about it. That is the epitome of leadership right there, right? Because you never know what you're going to be presented with. You just never know. And
Right.
you got to be as best prepared with the equipment and personnel that you have to do your best to take care of somebody. And that, dude, I applaud you. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Hey, well, the 3.5 years that I spent in 3-4 ADA, you know, gave me that bedrock and laid those seeds and taught me those skills, to be able to do that. So it's a blessing that I was able to serve, in that unit and serve with some great heroes. And it has served me well, all along the way. So wouldn't trade that time with anybody for anything.
So do me a favor and brag on those folks that love you so much. Tell me about. I believe you said you have a daughter and a beautiful wife. Is that true?
I do, yeah. My wife Pam is we've been married for 10 years, and we have an 8-year-old daughter, Callie. And then I have a 25-year-old stepdaughter, my wife's daughter, Kaylin. She lives in Texas. We live in Arizona, up in the mountains of northern Arizona. We have snow on the ground right now. It snowed last night. We live at 7,000 feet. So I have a ski area like 20 minutes from my door. So people think Arizona, they think cactuses and hot weather, but I live at 7,000 feet and we get, hundreds of inches of snow every winter. We ski until May. We ski from November to May. So it's a beautiful place. I live in a huge ponderosa pine forest on a couple acres of land. So yeah, I have my 8-year-old daughter Callie. She goes to a little Christian school in town. And we go to a nice little church, and we got a great family. I have a lot of blessings. And Callie and I spend a lot of time skiing and hiking, and she's getting better with biking. So we hope we're going to be mountain biking together soon. And then, my wife, Pam, she retired. She was a project manager at an insurance company. She now just has the luxury of being a stay-at-home mom, where she had to work as a single parent the whole time she was raising her first daughter, Kaylin. So, I'm really glad that that's a blessing that I can help her, have and just enjoy being a mom and doing all that kind of stuff, instead of dropping your kid off and running to work and then running to pick your kid up and then run into whatever. So yeah, and then we got 2 dogs. We've got 2 labs. I got a chocolate lab and a yellow lab that go with us everywhere, out in the wilderness, in the woods, whenever we're hiking or running or doing whatever. So I got a pretty good thing going on. I've had cancer a couple times, so my neck is kind of a little messed up. I have a big scar there. I just had neck cancer last year, throat and neck cancer. So I had big surgery and tumor taken out of my throat, all the lymph nodes ripped out of the side of my neck, and had radiation for 6 weeks down at Mayo Clinic down in Phoenix. But I got through that, finished that up in May, and I had 1 3-month checkup so far that's been clean. So that's a blessing. I had the same kind of cancer on this side 4 years ago, and then it just came back. So we all got our blessings and we all have our struggles, and I just try and keep my eye on the Lord and be thankful for everything good in my life. And you just gotta be ready to jump.
Right, when the green light comes on, you gotta be ready to go.
That's right.
They say there's no atheist in the foxholes, and you've already stated a few things. Tell me more, if you don't mind, about your spirituality.
Yeah, I've always been a Christian. I even though I had a crazy childhood, and but my mom raised me in church, and the Boy Scouts that I got involved in when I was a kid, met in my church, and I stayed plugged in, to religion. you know you know Moving around in the Army, it's kind of hard. You're changing churches all the time or whatever, but my wife and I, we go to church regularly. I lead the men's ministry at my church. So we sort of have our men's ministry is based off of Proverbs 27:17. So iron sharpens iron. So I lead that. We just had our men's retreat at a campground a couple weeks ago. So that's another, another opportunity for me to lead another area of blessing in my life. So it's just, I go to a small non-denominational church, yeah, so I'm following your religious teachings and reflections and things like that, online, and I enjoy those things as well. But yeah, I'm a dirty, broken Christian that's just trying to follow Christ and try and be a better man every day and be a better husband and a better father. And God is my example. Jesus is my example on how to do that. So I want to plug. I'll give one religious plug. I'll plug the video series The Chosen. Have you seen it?
I haven't. I'll look it up. The Chosen, huh?
The Chosen. It's you can download the app to your phone. It's free. It's the first multi-season video series about the life of Christ, and it's really all about him and his disciples. It's really well done. They've only done the second season. Excuse me. They're getting ready to film the third season in the spring. It's planned out to be 7 seasons long, and it really digs into Christ and how he started his ministry and it's amazing. We had a small group at our house every Thursday throughout the summer last summer, where we had about 15, 16 people from our church that would come in. We'd watch an episode. The episodes are like 35, 45 minutes long, but it's entertaining, but it's also very true to scripture. The guy who's the director, this guy Dallas Jenkins, was a secular movie director, and he had this big box office hit that flopped, and he was basically thought he was going to be out of work and didn't know what he was going to be doing, and he made this small short film for his church in Texas. It was a Christmas short film, and it was so well received, and it went viral, and they were like, hey, you need to do something bigger, and he just sort of stumbled into this project. But they have a Catholic priest, they have a Jewish rabbi, and they have a biblical scholar that advises them as a roundtable on all of the writing and everything they do, every scene, everything. It's all, they really have done a very good job of having experts from the different areas of religion that would be relevant to Christ, including, a Jewish rabbi, advising them so that they're not, really straying too far to left or right with things. And the first time I watched it, it's eight episodes per season. The first time I watched it, I sat there with my phone, with my Bible app open, reading the scriptures that are related to that episode. But it's just really amazing. And they fill in a lot of gaps in scripture. It doesn't take the place of the Bible. It's not meant to take the place of scripture, but it really motivates a lot of people. So look it up. It's called The Chosen. It's really amazing. Like, here's an example, like Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene is mentioned 3 times in the Bible. And 2 times it's just a reference back to, that she was possessed or whatever. It's a one line reference in the Bible. There's really not a lot in the Bible about Mary Magdalene, but she's one of the main characters in this series, and they give her a personality. And the very first episode is her meeting Jesus and how he comes to save her from her demons and her torture. And it's just amazing. It's my wife and I, we're big, huge fans, and it's bringing a lot of non-church people, a lot of people who say they're religious, but they haven't really dug into church or dug into a relationship with Christ. It's really bridging the gap and breaking down a lot of fears and barriers for people, because it makes Christ very relatable, and it makes you understand when you see what his disciples are going through, and that all 12 of them, they were all just carpenters and fishermen and just blue collar guys that were all broken and screwed up. And, Christ taught them a different way to live. So that's kind of my, that's my plug right there for The Chosen.
Yay! I love it. I'll check it out. That's the kind of feedback I love to get. So thank you.
Check it out. You can download the app to your phone, and you can cast it right to your TV.
Yep.
It's amazing, and it's free. It's all free.
I love it. Well, I'm excited, and I'll be reporting on it. If nobody else, to you personally. So thank you.
You when you watch an episode, let me know. We'll get on the phone. We'll crosstalk you. Let me know what you think.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm totally excited.
Absolutely.
Excited. Yeah. Okay. So tell me, where your trajectory's leading. Tell me what, next 5 years looks like. What are you excited about in the future? I mean, you're about to have, and let's see, in 5 years you're gonna have a teenage daughter. You're gonna, you're gonna be, you're gonna be looking at the next step of emergency room, technician or something. You're gonna do it 15 years straight before you do something else. I mean, tell me about what you're thinking.
So, um, I got out of the Army as a major with 14 years on active duty. There's just not a lot of people that do that unless they're forced to. My mom told me I was crazy. She's like, "You're not going to get your pension. You're an idiot." My mom, here I am going to medical school to be a doctor. My mom, God rest her soul, my mom's telling me I'm an idiot. And a lot of people did. They're like, "You only need 6 more years to get your pension." And I was like, well, unfortunately, most people that go to medical school, they're 22 years old. I started medical school at 36.
Oh wow!
And if I had stayed in, to do my another 6 years, I would have been trying to go to medical school at 42, and it just wasn't going to happen. So, this career change, I started med school in 06. I finished my fellowship roughly, 2016. It was a 10-year journey between 4 years of med school, residency, fellowship. That's a long time to, transition to career change. That's how long it takes to where you can walk into an ER and just be a doctor and do your job. And I just took my oral board exam this Thursday and Friday, which is why we had to reschedule. So, I mean, I'm still taking exams. I'm board certified in family medicine. I did a residency in family medicine. I went and did a fellowship in emergency medicine. So last year I took my 6-hour written board exam in emergency medicine, passed that. And so this year I had to do an oral board exam where you sit in front of a board of doctors and they fire cases and questions at you, and you got to think on your feet and basically tell them how you would run the ER and treat these patients. And so I just did that last week. And hopefully if I pass that, I'll be finally a board certified. I'll be double board certified in family medicine, emergency medicine. And hopefully I won't have to take any more tests other than recertifications. But I don't plan to career transition into anything else. I mean, I'm hoping that I'll be able to do this until I'm done working. And the nice thing about emergency medicine, compared to a lot of other practices, if you're a kidney doctor, if you're a nephrologist, or if you're a cardiologist, you have to build your practice. If you're a family medicine doctor, a primary care doctor, you got to build your practice. You got to build up your patients. You got to, have all these longitudinal relationships with people. But as an ER doc, you're kind of a hired gun. You come in, you take care of the ER, 12 hours later, you leave. And so ER is a kind of medicine where you can work part-time. You can do, I do 12-hour shifts a month. That's my full-time gig. I do an extra 4 shifts at a hospital up on the reservation, up on Lake Powell, up on the Navajo reservation, just to earn some extra money because I'm behind the power curve starting this medical career so late. I have a lot of tuition bills to pay. Medical school is not cheap, and the Army does not help me with any of that because I went to West Point. Once the Army sends you to West Point, they don't pay for anything else. You're on your own. But anyway, so I'm going to work full time, for quite a while, and then when I get to the point where my med school loans are paid off and my mortgage is paid, I'll probably go down to part time. But I can still do this job, 4 shifts a month. So it's nice because it's a kind of medicine where you can just work part time, where there's not a lot of other doctors that can really do the doctor thing part time. You're either in it full go or you're not. So, and then the other thing that's on my schedule right now is I'm actually trying to go back into the military. I'm 51 years old, but I'm trying to go back into the Guard as a doc. So I've gone through all the process and got all my waivers for my age and all that stuff. But they have a hard time getting docs in the Guard and the reserves. I'm going through that right now. I got to lose about 20 pounds of non-airborne weight that I'm carrying around. So, I got to hit the road and start doing some more PT and lose some weight so I can make tape, because even doctors apparently have to make tape. So that's a good thing. So who knows? And they haven't made any promises to me if I'd go back in as a major or a lieutenant colonel, or I might go back in as a captain. I have no idea. It really doesn't matter to me. But if I can, if I lose this weight and go back in, it'll be kind of funny because like I'll have to go back to officer basic course. So I'll have to go to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio for like 3 weeks this summer, and then 3 weeks the next summer to like this salute and shoot course they do for doctors, for these guys who like have never been in the military. They don't know anything. And, I got, a couple of combat patches and, master wings and, a couple rows of medals or something. It'll be hilarious. So, that'll be a blessing, and that'll keep me interested. But, I miss the military community. So this opportunity to go back in as a doc, is something that's kind of been gnawing at me for a little while. And then, it'll be nice to serve long enough to get my pension. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor and you make good money, having 14 years of active duty time towards a pension and not have anything for it. And, my mom called me an idiot, but I don't know that I was an idiot for getting out and doing that. But if I can go back in and finish and serve, it would be great to serve and retire. And then just have that extra little bit of income, whatever it is. It's not a whole lot, but that would be a great thing to have. So that's, in the next 5 or 10 years, I see myself just continuing to work as a doc and, raise my family, but also, hopefully can finish out my career as a doc in the military and, get an opportunity to deploy and serve, as a doc, which will be nothing like, any of the deployments I've done before. Because you probably know these like reserve combat support hospitals, they come in for like 90 days and then they leave. They're not stuck in Afghanistan or Iraq for a year. Their unit is transitioning in, and by the time the whole unit gets on the ground, they start transitioning out. They're not in theater for that long. So that won't be too hard on my family if I'm only gone for 90 days, every couple of years. So I'm praying about that and working on that.
I'm excited. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's like putting like I'm 53. So in the thought of putting the uniform back on, I'm going to be honest with you. If they offered me a remote outpost as a guardian, I would probably take it. Right? I mean, if they could send me out to somewhere, I go.
Hey, I see you out there doing your 5K runs.
Yeah,
I know you can do it.
I'm staying in shape, buddy. They might call me up. They're like, President Trump gets back in office or something. He has to call me up. He's like, hey man, I got a mission for you. I'm like, yes sir, a guardian.
That's right. You can do it, man.
Oh, that's right. Maybe President Biden will call me tonight and ask me. I'll sign up, man. I want to be a guardian.
We'll see. Somebody would have to dial the number for him. I don't know if he's quite capable. I don't want to go there, but yeah.
I know. I love it. So tell me something about you. I mean, that I don't know already. Something we haven't talked about. So and also remember, the hope of this is for your kids one day, right? And your grandkids to see this and look back on it. Because, your daughter, 8 years old, she doesn't know about paratrooper, Dad. She doesn't have any idea.
No.
She doesn't know what jumping out of an airplane with thousands of other people in other airplanes and landing and assembling in the middle of the night. It's just hard to understand.
Even just the simple thing of, she's never been the kid with mom, sitting on Sicily DZ on Saturday waiting for daddy to jump out of the airplane, because, have families can come and watch the fun jumps or whatever. She's, she hears some stories about, dad was a soldier, and, she knows I have a uniform hanging in the closet. And she knows I hang around with a questionable crew of former Army guys. But she doesn't have that firsthand experience. So I'd love to be able to, it would be a nice part of my relationship with her as a dad, to come home with my uniform on and, beret tucked into my cargo pocket on the side leg and, your boots on. And I don't even know if they wear the beret anymore, and even a black beret, I don't even think they wear those anymore. And then nobody shines jump boots anymore. So I guess I just wear some the dirty old tan boots. Probably not a soldier in the Army that knows how to shine a boot these days. And that's probably okay. They're probably doing better things with their time. But but that would be a nice thing.
Yeah, I think that with these new dress uniforms, that they're putting on brown jump boots again. Can you
Okay.
imagine spit shining brown jump boots? Now that is good.
That's old. That's old school.
Brown jump
That's old
boots.
school. It's gonna make me want to go watch. Make me want to go watch Band of Brothers again right now.
I know, right?
Even though those are 100 worse guys.
So, hey, one of the I'm about to interview the granddaughter of one of the Band of Brothers. She's on my list. I can't wait.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Oh,
which guy? Right? Is it somebody we know or?
Yes, but I'm drawing a blank right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, text it to me when you remember when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Dude, that right there that just happened to you, that happens to me like 20 times a day, man.
Oh yeah, I have the worst memory about different names and different things. It's really wild how we all have so many different traits and things that we're good at. I know several people that would never forget a name. It just would never not come out of their mouth. They know everybody's name. Sergeant Major Adams is like that. Sergeant Major Adams, he never missed nothing. When he walked up to you, he knew who you were, what your mom's name was, what city they were from, how many babies you had, what kind of car you drove. You were like, dude, you followed me around or what,
He knows about that loan that you took outside of Post last week, He knows about that payday loan that you haven't started paying on yet at 27% interest. He knows.
Oh my gosh, such great times and wonderful leaders, wonderful times, So, so looking back on, do you remember, the longest day for you when you were in the military? Did you have a time where you were cowering from fear?
I remember the longest day.
Okay, tell me about it.
The longest day was prop blast in 3480A. That was my longest day. Let me tell you, man. And I heard they don't, they have some kind of professional version of it these days, but that's another blessing that I am so thankful to have had. So those bastards electrocuted me like 13 times in that door, because I was down in the motor pool. I was the big, cocky, second lieutenant from West Point, and my buddy in Bravo Battery at the time, my little platoon mate we were both from West Point. Chris Donnelly, little Lieutenant Donnelly, who was 10 times as big on the inside as he was tall. He was a guy who was so little. We'd jump onto Sicily, in the middle of the summer on a hot day, and his parachute would go up. He'd catch a heat draft, and he would be going. The rest of us are coming down at a high rate of speed. He'd be catching heat draft. He'd end up floating all the way to the bleachers on Sicily. He was like 120 pounds soaking wet. So man, I tell you what, that day, Sheldon Horsfall, I don't know if you remember Lieutenant Horsfall, Frankie J. Cook, all those, the senior lieutenants and the captains that put us through that prop blast thing, doing a 12-mile road march with like dead rotten fish tied around your neck, and we were in Area J, low crawling through the mud for like an hour, carrying logs and 5-gallon water cans for miles. And that was the longest day. And then finishing up that night, dehydrated as hell, with that dinner and having to go through that door, that they electrocuted with those freaking those RMAT, was it the RCMAT generator, the one that charged the little the RCMAT planes? They used that generator to electrify the door, and they got it greased all down. They're screaming water landing at you, and they're spraying you with the hose while they got the spotlights in your face, and all the first sergeants and the sergeant major and the battery commanders, they're all sitting there laughing their ass off, and they're yelling tree landing, and they're hitting you with branches. And I am not exaggerating, Sergeant Marshall. I went through that door 13 times, and I don't remember the guy's name, but it was the new S4, new captain. who went through Prop Blast with us. And he went through that door one time and he started complaining of chest pain. And they had to call an ambulance, and like the military ambulance came and picks this guy up and takes him to Womack, right? That was the end of his Prop Blast. After I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, what are these guys doing to us? I'm like, this guy just went to the hospital and they're going to electrocute us. They're going to put us through this door again. And, they wanted you to say all kinds of stupid stuff about yourself and, tell people, all sorts of inappropriate things that you did with your mother and your sister. And, if you refused to say those things, they made you go through the door again, And so, Chris Donnelly went through it quite a few times. I went through that thing 13 times, but, and then after all that was over, and you got to drink some beer and, you got welcomed into the brotherhood. But that was in all of the things that I've done in my life, a year in Afghanistan, a year in Iraq, med school, all kinds of studying and exams. That was the longest day of my life, man. That was a long day. I think I went home at like 3:00 in the morning. They drove us home. And I remember I just passed out in my tub. Like I was going to take a bath, and my BDUs were so cinched because they were throwing all kinds of stuff on you, fish juice and all kinds of stuff. And, they were dumping sardines down your back, all kinds of stuff. And I was just going to lay in the tub and soak. And I just passed out in the tub with no water. And my roommate was a lieutenant in the 82nd Signal Company. And like he came into my bathroom like 18 hours later, I was still passed out in the tub. And he's like, dude, are you all right? Do we need to call an ambulance? And I just laid there asleep in the porcelain tub for like almost a full day. I've never been that tired or exhausted or worn out in my life, man. But 3-4 ADA had a lot of great traditions, but that Prop Blast, man, you got put through the ringer, to get into that battalion, even as a lieutenant. They put you through the ringer, man. It was you. You were not allowed to walk into the battalion and just lead men. You had to go through some stuff.
So you realize that was the end of the Prop Blast, right? That was the beginning of the end. They didn't have them that way ever again. Like that was the pinnacle. But when the guy went to the hospital, that's when everything got exposed. That was when it was a mess. I was a Jumpmaster instructor. I was a black
Captain Schaefer. Captain Schaefer.
Yeah.
Captain Schaefer was the S4. That was him.
And
well, lucky me, I made it at the pinnacle. Lucky me.
You were the last hard class.
yeah, that's like every guy that goes to West Point. We were the last real class. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was brutal.
So I was a black hat, and so I remember somebody coming down and talking to me and said, dude, they lost it on Prop Blast. They actually sent one of the guys to the hospital. The ambulance had to come, and I'm like, oh no, right? Because, I mean, you knew what was going on at Prop Blast, but you're not privy to it as a sergeant or a staff sergeant or whatever. You got to be a first sergeant,
right,
or sergeant major or a captain or above to get involved, right? So I didn't know. But I heard the stories.
And but that was one of the things that gave us the reputation that went up and down our dens, like even something like Prop Blast, because all the infantry units, they all did Prop Blast and stuff, but, nobody does it like 3-4 ADA, whether it's how you march, how you jump, how you fight in the PT pit, our battalion. And that's, you're part of the bastard brigade, right? You're supposed to be looked down upon. You're supposed to be the redheaded stepchild of the division, and becoming a unit that wasn't afraid of and we set high standards. I don't know if I lost you there.
You broke up.
I got you?
Yeah, we're getting back together, but we definitely had a bad connection there for a second.
Okay.
It's
I can hear you.
oh my gosh, I just love the thought of that camaraderie and those great times, right?
Yeah, from Prop Blast to Gabby's Bar on Dyer Street.
Oh my gosh, I write a story about being with Stout and Gabby's. Gosh, I'll never forget a time where I was sitting at the bar and we were there for AQF and they had made me take more tequila shots than I wanted. They were like, "It's time to take a shot," and I like took one, right? And then 10 minutes later, they're, "Oh, it's time for another shot." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, no, I don't want one." And they're like, "No, you got to take one." And I'm like, "Well, okay, I guess so." So you take one. By the third one, I'm sitting on the corner of the bar, just kind of leaned over. I ended up puking in an empty beer pitcher right there. It was awful. Oh, it was awful. On Gabby's, yeah. Woo, boy,
Hey,
Gabby's.
they taught you how to party in that unit as well. I still to this day don't understand how so many of my soldiers, they would drink till 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes, but they'd show up to PT and they'd run 3, 4, 5 miles, or even the guys that just smoked. They're just smoking cigarettes, chain smoking cigarettes right up until it was time to fall in for PT formation. And I'm dying running down Ardennes. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. These guys are ready to go pop their next pack as soon as the run's over. There's some tough guys in that.
Oh, it was amazing. It absolutely was amazing. I was a smoker. I smoked, and I would take a
And
take
some
a
really
smoke
tough,
right
some
before.
tough soldiers, some great NCOs.
Oh,
And then
absolutely.
and the battalion softball teams, doing softball practice at 5:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning out on the field. I broke my nose at softball practice out on that field behind the barracks. 5:30 in the morning, took a fly ball right off the tip of my glove right onto my nose, broke my nose, bled like crazy. Ended up getting hospitalized at Womack overnight.
Oh, wow.
Because they couldn't stop my nose from bleeding. It was crazy. So yeah, even good old 3-4 ADA softball leaves its mark.
Oh my gosh. So before we get out of here, I would love it if you would call us to attention
Yeah.
and maybe we could sound off with Cold Steel, prepare to move forward. And that would be awesome. And I would also love to get you saluting and signing out, saying, your name and rank and signing out. I'm not saying we got to do that now, any of that now. I'm just making sure
Oh
we
yeah.
get that, in your
Yeah.
head and in your brain.
No, no, that's fine. That's too easy. Be my
Yeah.
pleasure, my honor.
Yeah. So what hobbies do you have that keep you busy, in your spare time?
I don't have a lot of spare time. I don't have a lot of hobbies, but I built a nice home gym when COVID kicked off. So I don't go to the gym anymore. I work out and I get all the gym equipment because just like anything now, because of COVID, it's hard to get anything. Um, I between my job and the two jobs that I have, and trying to be present in my daughter's life and my wife, and then serving my men's ministry at my church, and trying to stay in touch with my family that are out all around the country. I have a lot of hobbies. I mean, love to spend time outdoors. Anything I can do outdoors. If it's skiing in the winter, if it's hiking in the summer, mountain biking. I used to do a lot of backpacking. Probably nothing I enjoy more in the outdoors than humping for 7 days out in the middle of nowhere and seeing some of the beautiful places that God created that most people can't get to. I've found that some of the most beautiful places on the earth, you got to walk for 3 or 4 days straight to get to them. And I think God did that on purpose. He keeps those places hidden from all of the, maybe lazy people that would destroy and not appreciate that kind of beauty. So I don't do as much backpacking as I used to just because of how busy I am now. But I have a couple doctor buddies that we still go on backpacking trips. We go out to Glacier National Park or The last big trip I did was out in Grand Tetons. We did a 5-day backpacking trip. We did the Teton Crest Trail. So, that's only once or twice a year now, but that's still a passion. That's something I really enjoy. But, between working out and exercising, hiking, mountain biking, and doing some backpacking, it's mostly outdoor stuff. I don't, it's my wife and I struggle just to fit in a date night, once a month, and, just go eat dinner and, have some quiet time together. So, life just seems to be moving faster and faster the older I get. And even you retired people, Sergeant Marshall, like my parents are retired. They're busier now than they were when they were working. I call them and I want to get together and do things like, oh, we got this going on, we got this, we got that. I'm like, how can you people be so busy? You're retired. Like, so I don't know if that's just the way the world's going, but even, everybody who's done, they've hung up their jump boots and they're just doing whatever. Everybody's so busy these days, and I'm in that same trap. So that's about it, man. Nothing too exciting, from that regard.
All right. So you got to go back and live 1 year again. Sometime in your past, what year is it going to be?
Live it again just because I enjoyed it, or live it again because you want to fix it?
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I just off the cuff, without taking too much time to think about it, I mean, I just go back 1995 to 1996, Cold Steel, first platoon leader, Charlie 16, on my Humvee, First Lieutenant Jackman with Sergeant First Class Dimitri Smith and First Sergeant Lopez, or First Sergeant Lear, and Captain Russ Bodine and all those guys. Sergeant Schemmel and all the good dudes in my platoon. I would live that year over again in a minute.
Amen. Amen. Well, take us back home to Charlie Battery, and maybe think about calling your platoon to attention, and I'll pretend to be in first platoon with you, and we'll say, Cold Steel, prepare to move forward, maybe, and then maybe you can give us a salute and sign out for us.
All right, so I'll do like platoon attention, and you'll do Cold Steel, prepare to move forward, or we do that at the end, or what? I forget.
We'll do it together. Like, so we used to say Cold Steel, or they used to say Charlie, and Cold, and they or Charlie Battery, or Attention, and we'd say Cold Steel, prepare to move forward. Do you remember that? Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, I'll just do battery. I'll just do battery attention.
There you go. Do battery or whatever you want to do.
We'll do battery attention, and then Cold Steel, prepare to move forward, and then I'll all right, we'll do it.
I love it.
We'll try and make it not too awkward. Battery, attention.
Cold Steel,
prepare to move forward. First Sergeant, take charge of your troops. Dismissed.
Oh, I love it.
All right, this is Major Jackman signing out. Sergeant Marshall, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
I've absolutely enjoyed it so
airborne
much. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, sir.
All right, airborne all the way.
All
All right, have a good night.